Good morning, and good morning, and welcome to the First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton, a welcoming spiritual community. My name is Marion Scott, and I serve on the Supporting Asylum Seekers group here at FPC. For those visiting FPC for the first time, we welcome you. Please let us know you are here by filling out one of the forms, one of the cards in the pews, and hand it to an usher. Drop it in the plate, or hand it to Meg, who's there in the back. We're holding up one of those forms. And she's our welcoming membership coordinator. Our minister and staff and board are listed on the front of the order of service. And yes, you can certainly reach out to them for any more information. If you'd like a large print order of service or hymnal or an assisted living device, please ask our ushers. Our assisted living devices are small radios. Anyone is welcome to use one of these to listen to the service from another space in or around our building. I'd like to draw your attention to the announcements in the order of service and invite you to check out our webpage for more information. You can also sign up there for our newsletter and email alerts. During the summer, our Sunday services are led by community members while our minister is on break. Today's service is led by Mary Evans, Steve Evans, and Roy Miller. A full list of our Sunday services is included in the order of service. After the service, please join us for refreshments, conversation, and to meet some of the families we are supporting. It's offered by IPRR, that's the Interfaith Partnership for Refugee Resettlement. And we would like to acknowledge that we hold this service as we gather on the stolen traditional lands of the Massachusetts, Nipmuc, Pawtucket, and Wampanoag people. We pay respect to those indigenous peoples who lost their lives in the colonization of this land and recognize that these indigenous tribes are still today facing violations of sovereignty, territory, and water. We also give thanks for the earth we walk upon, the waters, the life-giving plants, and all the earth's creatures, as well as the wind, sun, moon, and stars. We recognize this is a first step in moving toward right relationship with Native peoples and the healing of the earth.
Good morning. My name is Joan Toussaint. I'm a member of the Asylum Seekers Task Force and the Interfaith Partnership for Refugee Resettlement. I hope that today's program will give you insight into our work, answer questions you might have, and most importantly, provide a window into the circumstances that brought our families to Massachusetts. In preparing these opening words, I searched for poems that could tell the stories of people who flee their home countries seeking asylum. This search led me to a book of poetry titled I Am a Rohingya, written by survivors of Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, the refugee camp from which our families have come. The book came about through the efforts of two academics whose goals in 2019 was to create the first ever creative writing workshops in Cox's Bazar. I Am a Rohingya includes the poems of three strong female writers, one of whom, Yasmin Ullah, wrote a 6-page poem called Birth. Here's an excerpt. I was born of tired backs, exhausted bodies, looking for provisions so hard to come by, walking miles carrying water to makeshift huts without help. Water or mud you have to drink to survive. I was born of empty stomachs, tongues dried and parched lips, from starvation of food and water for months on end. I was born of the forced, crooked smile, blurred with tears, the slow fade of resilience. I was born as one of the forgotten, of those the world doesn't quite remember, but at least I was born, so you can hear me speaking up, so you, the world, can listen. We taste fear in every breath. It's not enough to hope for the generosity of helping hands or consoling voices. I want the ears of love, the heart of justice that believes that as much as we are victims, there is potential in our social contribution. There is more to being Rohingya than Exodus. Now, as Lori lights the chalice, I thank all of you who are here today and are supporting our efforts.
Good morning. My name is Ingrid Holcomb. I am one of the lay ministers of this church. And one of the pages in your order of service lists the other lay ministers besides myself who are covering for Cindy while she's away a lot this summer. If you have something that you need to communicate, you can see that for starting tomorrow. And for the next 2 weeks, I'll be answering your call or your questions. You can contact me directly, but if you want to, you can also just write to caring@fpc.com, which is the typical way that you would send in a joy or sorrow for us to announce on your behalf. So if you want a friend, if you want a prayer or reading, a chalice to go, sing a song, play a game, have a bite to eat, we're here for you. And also we can help you decide if we should contact Reverend Cindy, because she would certainly like to hear from you if it's that kind of message. Hope that's clear. So I did not receive any joys or sorrows through email, so I will pass the mics to the ushers. And please rise, state your name, talk right into the mic. I think that's it. So it's up to me to light 2 final candles. One, a tradition we learned from our friends in Marlborough Hudson. We light a candle for the cost of war. And another for the rest of the joys and sorrows that are in our hearts in our wider community that are unspoken this morning.
Well, good morning again. My name is Roy Miller, and I was one of the original members of the founders of the IPRR. And if you remember, it was just about 3 years ago that the U.S. military left Afghanistan. And at that time, you remember those cargo planes full of Afghans, and many more Afghans chasing after the planes, trying to get out of Afghanistan. Well, many of those people had helped the U.S. military during the wars there, and now they are fleeing for their lives. And meanwhile, back here in Stowe and Acton, a group was forming, a group of 6 or 7 churches to try and assist these Afghan refugees. The group was FPC, the 2 churches of the Catholic Collaborative, Apple Valley Collaborative, St. Michael's in Acton, and St. Isidore's in Stowe. South Acton Church was a member. St. Matthew's in Acton, Church of the Good Shepherd, which is Episcopal, and also in Shirley, Mass, the Trinity Chapel. They were all members. And that group formed, and we formed a partnership with, and by the way, I'm very proud of the work we did here at FPC and all of you that might have contributed towards that relief that we provided for those in Afghanistan. Let's say that we've partnered with the IINE, that's the International Institute of New England. And IINE is in Lowell, Mass, and they provided things like legal help. They get some relief monies from the government to pass on, and they help with some rents, some medical attention, and so forth. So they did that. The estimate was, so we called ourselves at that time the Stowe-Acton Interfaith Partnership for Afghan Refugee Relief, ASAPAR, but it was like an alphabet soup. And later on, after the Afghans, we decided to continue as IPRR. That's the Interfaith Partnership for Refugee Relief. And much easier to say, and it can also be pronounced as IPRR. IPRR. So that was the story. During the Afghan relief, we were able to help 2 families of 6. One is still in Maynard. That's the Karimi family. And they have, you might have seen them at Market Basket because that's where they held their first jobs. 4 of the 6 worked at Market Basket. And since then, the girls have, with some help by FPC, the girls worked at Acton Medical in Acton in healthcare, and they're on their way to a success. The father, I personally helped, one of my contributions was helping the father to improve his job situation. And he didn't speak much English, so I went with him on the first interview and translated as best I could, interpreted the questions, and then I also helped him fill out the application, and he got the job, and it paid more. He was on the night shift, now it was day shift, so this was a real success for that family. And that's the Habibi man. The Karimi woman is now starting a business of food takeout service. And she scouted around for a place to do the cooking, and the Church of the Good Fellowship, one of the members in Acton, is providing their kitchen for her to do that work. The second family, the Habibis, they lived in a not so nice an apartment in Lowell for a year or so, and we helped them upgrade the apartment and get a better place to live. And he's the guy I help with that second job and with that upgrade to his job. And he works for a company in Littleton, makes little packets of sugar and salt and things like that in Chelmsford. And so that family is now independent and off and running. They're here in America. We sort of mentored them through that period when they got acclimated to this country. Well, I could go on and on with many stories, but I want you to hear Steve Evans, because Steve played a large role in transporting people, obtaining transportation to medical supplies and to the mosque and so forth. He also helped with driving, obtaining driver's license for the folks, and was able to get some donated automobiles. So Steve, tell us your story.
Thanks, Roy. Better than Joe Biden. I'll get to that, and also I first want to say how much I really appreciate everybody who works with our new immigrants in so many ways. Roy for all his work finding employment for people in the U.S. Susie and Kevin for finding housing, driving people everywhere, helping find jobs, even here little jobs in the community as people start up their lives, for general caring, and then especially for integration of our new friends into our community. Mary, Nancy and Judy, Diane, Lori, Marion, Joan, Ann and Justin, most of everybody that you're seeing here today as part of our group, for so many things, for English language learning and lessons, healthcare advice, meeting specific needs, caring in so many ways, and all around helpfulness. I can't list all of the ways. And for all of you for supporting us over the, I don't know how many years, a few so far, with donations, making meals, donating shoes into our box, and money, et cetera, and your time. So thank you. And then, as Roy said, I found my own niche among all these things in transportation, especially for the IPRR originally. So I started, even before that, driving asylum seekers to ICE check-ins, because they had to go at least once a year, sometimes every 6 months, really variable, to appointments in Burlington and say, yep, I'm still here, you know where I am. Then we found out they needed help with not just getting around, but driving lessons and driver's licenses, so we did some help with that. And then finding car donations eventually for families that needed them. And I'll get a little bit more into that. But we've since, as a group, we've branched out. I've helped coordinate, but we help with, in Lowell, especially buses. People get around to some places. Bicycles, ride sharing, trains to different places, Uber, electric scooters, and plain good old walking, which you might be surprised that our Rohingyan women are reluctant to do. They just don't want to go walk anywhere. So there's a little coaching, I think, that will happen. So most of our clients are very motivated to work, and they often start out by walking to wherever they find a job. And more than one is walk regularly in the dark, in the rain, in the winter ice. And so that's very motivating to find a ride share if they can find somebody like a coworker or a friend going to the same place and could get them a ride back and forth to work. Or they'll often even adopt a bicycle for local distances, and then perhaps again ride that bike in the dark or in the bad weather, which is concerning to us, but we help out when we can. So you ask, why not a car? Because we just take that for granted. Well, until last year, when we passed the Work and Family Mobility Act, which also called Driver's License for All, and that's last year it went into effect, most were not eligible to drive. They couldn't get a driver's license and would probably be arrested and deported if they were caught. So things are better now, but it's still a bumpy road, pardon the pun. The first impediment is, like for teenagers, is passing a written test, and our rules of the road are different than at home, and the language is different. And luckily, the written test is offered in many different languages, so it's, with some study, most can pass that. So now, armed with a permit as an immigrant, you would look for a licensed driver with a car to practice with, or you might pay for a few driving lessons. Could you rent a car? No, you don't have a driver's license and you don't have a credit card. So then, to take and pass the driver's test, after a little practice, you need a friend with the right type of car, which is getting rare now. It needs to have an emergency brake that the road tester can operate. Most don't. But anyway, so we've overcome that. We've driven to driver's test appointments in friends' borrowed cars. And now only a few pass the first time because there's often language issues or just outright inexperience. And I'll tell you a little more about that. So I drove to Ida to her road test in the car that we borrowed from one of our IPRR members. And Ida had paid for and took 4 driving lessons in Lowell. So we left early, extra early, so she could take an hour or more to practice with an unfamiliar car on her way to the Leominster road test. It turns out she had only driven in Lowell, which is quite flat, and never drove faster than 30 miles per hour, or up or down a hill, and could not back up in a straight line. So we had to do a lot of work in that hour to get there. And it did turn out she was excellent at parallel parking. So she failed due to some language issues and mostly inexperience. But then one of the IPRR member, Kind Souls, took her under his wing and drove with her around many times, and she did eventually pass. And we acquired a car donated to her from Steve and Chris Weinberger, who are former church members here at First Parish, and now she drives herself to work at school. And she's working toward, I believe, a healthcare nursing degree and career. Her dad was a professional driver in Afghanistan, and he failed his driving test 2 or 3 times until we or I discovered that the Department of Motor Vehicles would provide a translator in the car, and then he passed immediately. And I know Kevin's not here, but he has some other similar stories to that I'd like to hear someday. Then finally, after you get your license, there's the final expense of owning and operating a car. And that average cost in round numbers is, you're going to be surprised, it's around $1,000 a month. You probably take that for granted or bite the bullet and feel the pain once every month or so, or even if you have 2 cars. But at a minimum wage job, that car takes 1/3 of your pay. For a donated car, which are very much appreciated, even the remaining cost of insuring and operating and repairing a car is about half that much. So that's about it for now. For next year, I think I'll share stories of e-scooters and buses and bikes. But now we're going to take time out for a prayer.
A lamplighter, this is a lamp, is a caregiver. This lamp was my father's. He used it to light his fruit stand. He was a first-generation immigrant, and he sold fruit on the streets to make a little money for his family, even into the evening hours. A lamp keeper is a caregiver. It was the person who kept the lighthouse lit in the fog. It was used in the coal mines. It was used by Southern Baptists to protect victims of human trafficking. When one feels weary from the work of keeping the lamp, this prayer can help. It's a prayer for the lamplighter by Joe Cherry, who was an interim minister at First Parish Church in Brookline, Massachusetts. My prayer for you today is that you understand that you cannot be and say everything, that you are a light, a lamp in the night to help people find their way, but you cannot be their way. Remember also that a steady lamp by which others may guide their own journey is a gift from and to the universe. Be steady, but do not deny your own humanity. Do not forget to take breaks. Do not let your desire to be that steward of that lamp keep you too long from your own journey. Share the burden, share the responsibility, share the honor with others. We will now take a moment of silence to consider all those refugees in need of a lamp keeper.
This is, here we go. This is the last weekly offering in the month of June. And for the month of June, the recipient of half of the plate was the Seeking Asylum Task Force. And the task force has agreed that today, their portion should be placed towards the IPRR, and we're very pleased about that. Trish will be playing the Blue Boat Home, and most of you know that, so feel free to hum along or sing or whatever as she plays it. The offering will now be taken.
Good morning. I'm Mary Evans, a member of the Supporting Asylum Seekers Task Force, and also a member of IPRR, the Interfaith Partnership. We're ready for the PowerPoint. Sure, no worries. I'm going to be talking about the family, the Rohingya family that we're working with. And as Roy mentioned, it's a 7-church partnership. Next slide, please. Next. Roy gave us some nice information about this. I will say that the IPRR is in partnership with the International Institute of New England, one of 3 resettlement agencies in Massachusetts, and we work with their Lowell office. Next, please. Next. Roy gave some of this great information. Next, please. Next, please. Just how we went from Afghan to working with Rohingya people. And so we're doing Resettle Together. Community sponsorships. There's only about 8 of them in the state, actually, and 5 of them are in Lowell, and we actually are considered 2 of those 5 because we're supporting 2 families. Next, please. So we learned in December that in 3 weeks we'd be working with a family from Myanmar, a Rohingyan family. Next, please. So I want to talk a little bit about the Rohingya people. They follow the teaching of Islam. They're from the Rakhine state, of what is now Myanmar. You might think of it as Burma. They've actually been stateless since the 1700s, and Cox's Bazar has actually been around since then. Cox was an Englishman who started a resettlement back in the 1700s. So you'll see on a map, we can go to the next slide, please, that Bangladesh and Burma are next to each other, and you can see why the Rakhine state is the green state close to the water, why they would go to Bangladesh. And back and forth it has been for hundreds of years. I think that they consider their home Myanmar, but also many people now are born in Cox's Bazar. Our family is now up to 12 interrelated family members, and the vast majority have been born in Cox's Bazar and have lived there for their 25 to 30 some odd years. Next, please. It's a very, very challenging place. And it's grown a lot in this century. In 2008, 2012, 2017, and again in March this year, the military in Burma, Myanmar, has worked against them, and more have fled. So in Cox's Bazar, there's gangs, there's violence, there's burnings, and so people do their best to send at least one family member out, often to other parts of Asia, to earn money to send back to people in the camps, because there's no real way to earn money in the camps. Next, please. So we know people all over the world get on boats to travel to other countries, and that's what people do in Cox's Bazar. So our young family sent their 17-year-old, their oldest, Yassine. He actually got some funds he had a relative, an uncle in Saudi Arabia, who gave him funds to take a boat trip. It took more than 20 days to get to, next slide, please, Indonesia, thank you, where he networked and found another Rohingyan man who helped him get a job. So he worked there for 12 years, cutting rebar at first, and then he found out that he could read the plans, and then he found out that he could supervise, and he supervised about 80 people a day. And he built the skyscrapers. And when he was there, and Roy actually found out some of this information through interviewing him for a resume. And while he was there, they would sleep on the ground floor of whatever building. They would just camp out there, and their expenses were food, and then he would send all the other money home back to Cox's Bazar for his family. But sending money back to Cox's Bazar has its issues, because your family starts to do better, and then the gangs maybe kidnap one of your family members for ransom money. So he worked there for 12 years. He came back to the camps, next slide please, where he married a young woman, and they had a daughter, and it took him 4 years, but he worked with the US Embassy to get refugee status. And so he and some of his family members came over in January, and then more came over in May. Next slide, please. There are now 12 members in, we'll say, 3 apartments in Lowell. Next slide, please. Our commitment, by the way, is to 2 families, but when there are 12 people and they're all related and they're all living together, we can't say, well, I'm going to help you, but I'm not going to help you. So, of course, it spills over. Whoever needs rides, whoever wants to join our English language learning class, we take them all in. So this was their first night. And they arrived to Manchester. They got into New York. Then they arrived in Manchester, New Hampshire. It was freezing. It was like the one rainy, snowy night we had in January. It was like 5 degrees. It was quite shocking. They didn't have heat in their apartment, so one of our IPRR members took them into her home, but they were desperate to see the mother, who had gotten here earlier in October, so they went to Lowell the next day and all crowded into a very, very tiny apartment. Next slide, please. Through hard work with the International Relief Agency, we got heat on in the apartment. We had to, and you helped us furnish it, and we all worked on cleaning it. This is some pictures of the family, but it's not that clear, but there's a couple apartments and people living at different apartments. It's always a little fluid. Next slide, please. So what do we actually do? With your help, we do fundraisers and raise money. The money goes to help support the rent. Right now, and that's always changing how much we help, because as they start to work, they have less rent money coming to them, and they assume more and more of the finances. So we're well on our way to financially support them. That's not a concern of ours. We've outfitted the apartments. Steve has done a great job teaching the men how to ride buses around to the mosque and work. We have helped them obtain bikes, and the oldest son, who we call the patriarch because he is the earner, he is in charge. He does let everybody else know what they're supposed to do. We got him riding a bike, and we're working on helping with English language learning, making a budget. I have to give a shout out to Roy. You'll see a picture in a minute. Roy has done a lot of work with IINE, so I just want to say that right now. He's coming up on his 100th resume for immigrants and refugees. He goes there every Tuesday with the lovely Diane, and he helps people. He interviews 3 to 5 immigrants on a Tuesday, and then he goes home and he writes up their resume. And then, of course, they have the resume to help get a job. So a big shout out to Roy for his work. Yeah. We're also doing cultural orientation. As you can imagine, our family did not have running water or it was very, very living on dirt, kind of very challenging situations, refrigerators, stoves, ovens. We have very complicated houses, right? We don't even realize how complicated. So shopping was just has been a crazy experience as well, seeing the wealth of America, right? Next slide, please. This is outside the mosque, where the men go on Fridays and the women often go, but not always. Next slide, please. We'll run through some of their apartments. I know people were integral here in providing furnishings for their apartments. Next slide. Next slide. This is the patriarch, Yassine's daughter, Yasmin. She's about 20 months. She's a pistol. When we do English language learning, she sits up on the table and sings the ABC song with us, and she has a pencil, and we gave her a whiteboard, and she writes her ABCs, and she won't play. She wants to be right up there, and they're very, very proud of her. Next slide, please. Next slide. So they're really, really well furnished. Next slide. Next slide. So this is some more of the family. I do not have a picture of all 12 of the people. But you can see Yassine is on the left. He's the main wage earner. It's his brother on the right, Nur. We do English language learning once a week with all the women, and sometimes the men join in. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. We taught Yassine how to ride a bicycle, and he was sure he wasn't going to be able to because at 32 he thought he was too old. and he's saying, "Is this a dream? Is this a dream?" He was so excited. He made me take this picture and video him so his mother couldn't believe he could ride the bike. I want to thank everyone, especially Chris, for organizing the fundraiser that helped. We raised a good amount of money for the family for rent. Next slide, please. The sneakers, we had 60 pairs of sneakers from this church donated, and I don't have the final numbers, but because it's run by Apple Valley, but it's been a very successful fundraiser. Next slide, please. So today, the church at St. Matthew's in Acton will be having a potluck, and Yassine and I think 10 members of the family are going to make it. And you're welcome to join. He will be speaking there. And then we have a potluck. You don't need to bring anything. There's plenty of food. But if you're curious and would like to hear more about his journey, please do join us. And I don't have the address, but we can 435 Central Street in Acton, basically just pass by Idlewild, another 3/4 of a mile that's on the right. 12 o'clock lunch. Thank you.
Please turn to page 121 and join us. And I think a lot of you know the words without looking at them. Please be seated. We have a wish for you today. May you be blessed every step of your path by the light. May the sun shine upon you. May the moon move the tide of your emotions with grace and magic. May your heart sing. May your hearth be warm. And may your every blessed day be filled with joy and peace. And now join us together with our final song, Peace Be With You. Peace be with you till we meet again. As my places pass before you, keep love's banner float before you. Peace be with you till we meet again. And we're looking forward to seeing all of you at St. Matthew's shortly.